Hello, and welcome to our next episode of the Hormone Café. Today we're going to talk about what to look for in a prenatal vitamin and go over some of the nitty-gritty details and evaluate it from a clinical perspective. Prenatal vitamins are one of the most commonly used supplements and also one of the most poorly formulated categories on the market because the term prenatal, it's actually not regulated in a meaningful way. It doesn't guarantee quality, appropriate dosing, or even that the right ingredients are included. So all prenatals are not created equal. So what we want to do today is give you a framework for how to think about prenatals and how to check and see if you have a good prenatal. We're going to talk about what nutrients matter, what forms of the different vitamins and elements matter, what doses are appropriate, what's commonly missing, and then what to avoid. Because a true prenatal should support our real physiology, give us the nutrients and the building blocks that we need to support our egg quality and early embryonic development and our overall health. And we don't want it to just be checking a box. We want it to actually be nourishing our body. So before we go nutrient by nutrient, there's a few principles that matter. First is that our nutrients need to match our physiology. Early pregnancy is a period of rapid cell division that requires DNA synthesis, mitochondrial function, antioxidant support. So we're not just taking vitamins, we're literally supporting a very specific biologic process. Second, the form of a nutrient matters just as much as the dose. Two labels can look identical, but they can function very differently in the body. Big examples are folate versus folic acid and magnesium glycinate versus magnesium oxide. Third is that bioavailability matters. Many prenatals use cheaper, poorly absorbed forms, so even if the label looks adequate, the body may not be able to use what's in there. We'll start by talking about the difference between folate, folic acid, and talking about methylation, because this is one of the most important and most understood parts of a prenatal. One of the biggest reasons that we actually take prenatal vitamins, in addition to giving ourselves the building blocks that we need to make healthy cells, healthy hormones, healthy eggs, is for the folate, because there's been studies that show that it can actually help prevent neural tube defects. So it can literally prevent birth defects in babies. Who should be taking a prenatal vitamin? All women of childbearing age should be taking a prenatal vitamin. And folate is essential for our DNA synthesis, our cell division, and our neural tube development, like we talked about. And the neural tube closes very early. So it closes around day 28 after conception, often before someone even knows that they're pregnant. So it's very important to be on a prenatal vitamin and have the proper amount of folate even before you conceive. So this nutrient is critical. Let's talk about the distinction between folate and folic acid. So folate is a natural, biologically active form that's found in food and used by the body, and folic acid is a synthetic form used in a lot of conventional prenatals and fortified foods. It's made in a lab. It's just easier to make folic acid. But folic acid is not biologically active. It actually has to be converted by the body into the active form, which is called 5-MTHF or 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. So that conversion requires several enzymatic steps. One of the key enzymes involved is called MTHFR. Many people have a reduced activity of this enzyme, which means they don't convert folic acid efficiently. So instead of getting usable folate, they end up with lower levels of active folate and sometimes accumulation of unmetabolized folic acid. And we do see in the literature that unmetabolized folic acid can be detected in a significant portion of the population, especially if we're supplementing a lot. So as long as we're going to take the supplement, we want to make sure that our body can process it and it's not just sitting around in our bodies, because that can lead to fatigue and inflammation if we have ingredients in our bodies that actually aren't being used or metabolized. So let's talk about methylation, because that's the underlying process. Methylation is a fundamental biochemical process where the body adds a methyl group, basically a small chemical tag to molecules. So this process is involved in DNA synthesis, gene regulation, neurotransmitter production, detoxification, and folate has to be in its methylated form to participate in these processes. So when we're choosing a prenatal, what we want is methylfolate, or a 5-MTHF. usually in the range of 600 to 800 micrograms. This gives the body the form it can actually use without requiring it to be converted. So profolic acid is the precursor and methylfolate is the active form. And in a prenatal, we want to provide the active form directly. So please check the back and make sure that the folate in your prenatal is actually methylated, okay? So it should say methyl before it says folate, or it should say 5-MTHF. So let's talk about all the other key nutrients that I want you to audit your prenatal and make sure is in a prenatal. Vitamin B12 is the next one. B12 works closely with folate. If you have folate without adequate B12, you can run into what's called a methyl trap where the pathway doesn't function properly. So when we're thinking about B12, it also gives us energy and it supports our neuro pathways and the neurologic pathways of the baby. So we want 50 to 150 micrograms of vitamin B12. The other important thing is that you want the B12 to be methylated. So sometimes the chemical term of B12 is called cobalamin. So you want it to say methylcobalamin, okay? So B12, that's methylated. So make sure when it says cobalamin, it also says methyl in the front. The next one that's important is iron. So iron is very important because iron is what's helped used to make red blood cells. And in pregnancy, we want a lot of blood flow to our baby, to our placenta, to our ovaries, to our uterus, to our brains especially. So iron is very important because it's really, really easy to get anemic in pregnancy. Anemia means that we have low iron or low red blood cells because iron is used to make red blood cells. And the baby is going to hog all the iron from us. So we really want to make sure that we have enough iron. So make sure that iron is in your prenatal and you want to be having at least 18 milligrams of iron. My preferred form that I like is iron bisglycinate because it's better tolerated and absorbed and it's not as constipating. And another thing that's important is to just check your iron and check something called your ferritin levels, so your iron storage, and make sure that it's high enough, because if it's not, then you might need additional iron supplementation in pregnancy. Because not everybody needs high dose iron, not everybody needs iron, so you really want to individualize that based on your ferritin levels. The next one is iodine. You want your prenatal vitamin to have iodine. Iodine is critical for thyroid hormone production because our little fetus is making thyroid hormone, and then fetal brain. So we want at least 150 micrograms of iodine. So a lot of prenatals either limit iodine or underdose it. Just make sure that you have a good quality prenatal that has iodine. The other one that's very commonly missing is choline. This is one of the biggest gaps. Choline is extremely important for our neural tube development and brain development. It's recommended that we have at least 450 milligrams of choline per day, and most prenatals contain either 0 to 100 milligrams. So it actually often needs to be supplemented separately. If your prenatal doesn't have at least 450, then you're going to have to take a separate choline. Another way to get choline is to eat eggs. Eggs have a really high source of choline. So if you're somebody that eats eggs every single day, you don't always have to supplement. But if eggs do not sound good or they're not your thing, then I would definitely supplement with choline. The next thing that you're going to want is vitamin D. Again, this is a bit personalized. We want our vitamin D levels in pregnancy to be 50 or higher. Vitamin D is very important for immune regulation, implantation, inflammation, and mood in pregnancy. Usually you're going to want to be having about 2,000 to 5,000 units depending on your baseline levels. But it's very important to have your vitamin D checked, know what your levels are, and then make sure that you're supplementing to get those levels up to 50 and keep them there. The other thing that you want to make sure is that your prenatal either has omega-3 or you have to take a separate omega-3 in addition to your prenatal. So when we think about omega-3, we think about DHA and EPA. These are also important for fetal brain and eye development. And so we want at least 1,000 milligrams of omega-3. And because omega-3 is literally a fat or an oil specifically, oftentimes it's not going to be in your prenatal and you're going to have to take that one separately. Technically, sometimes we'll use the words omega-3 and fish oil and DHA interchangeably, but technically DHA is one type of omega-3. So when we look at all of our omega-3s, make sure we're getting 1,000 milligrams of omega-3s. every single day. The best way to get omega-3s through our diet is fish. So if we can eat fish, then we don't have to supplement with so much omega-3. In a perfect world, we'd want to be eating fish 2 to 3 times a week in order to get enough omega-3s naturally in our diet in preconception and in pregnancy. The next one is magnesium. Magnesium is really important for muscle relaxation, sleep, reducing constipation. If your prenatal doesn't have it and you're struggling with sleep or bowels, it can be really helpful to take 400 to 600 milligrams of magnesium in either magnesium glycinate, which is helpful for calmness and relaxation, or magnesium citrate, which is helpful for moving your bowels and reducing constipation. The next one that can be really helpful is zinc. Zinc is really important for cell division and immune function. So your prenatal is going to want to have at least 10 milligrams of zinc in it. If you're feeling sick and you're not feeling well, you can have up to 25 milligrams of zinc a day. So you can add additional zinc in order to support your immune system if you're feeling run down in pregnancy. So what's commonly missing, make sure your prenatal has enough choline, has magnesium, make sure you've taken omega-3, and then make sure that your folate and your B12 are methylated. So that's kind of what we think about in a complete prenatal. Things that we want to avoid are make sure we do folic acid. Make sure we do methylated folate instead of folic acid. We don't want to have lower quality mineral forms, so stay away from things like magnesium oxide, zinc oxide. One thing that I'm really big into is make sure that your prenatal doesn't have a lot of fillers. Some prenatals even have artificial sweeteners or sugar in them. They'll have maltodextrin or erythritol or sucralose or xylitol. This is why I really don't like gummy prenatal vitamins, because gummy prenatal vitamins are guaranteed to have either sugar or artificial sugar. Some prenatal gummies will have at least 4 to 6 grams of sugar in them. That's 4 to 6 grams of additional sugar that you're putting into your body every single day. So you really want to avoid added sugars in your prenatal. So your really high quality, pure prenatal vitamin will have no added sugar, no artificial sweetener. But it's impossible to find a gummy prenatal that doesn't have that. And then the other things that I don't love are dyes. Like, you never want your prenatal to be dyed. If it looks like it's a color, you really want it to be white or naturally dyed from the ingredients that are in it. So sometimes, for example, it'll be like a light yellow color from the B vitamins, but you don't want it to be dyed yellow. You don't want it to have any yellow or blue or red dyes in it, okay? And then just make sure that you look for fillers. Like, your prenatal literally should only have 2 other ingredients in it, right? Usually it will have a capsule, like a microcrystalline cellulose capsule in it, and then a binder. Sometimes they'll have things like glycerin to hold everything together, or that kind of a thing. So we really want to make sure that we're thinking of, are the forms biologically active? Are the doses where we need to be? Is there any added sugar? Is there any added fillers? And then I would say you really want to make sure that your prenatal is coming in a pill form, or if you're a person who just doesn't do well swallowing pills, because their prenatals can be a lot. Some prenatal vitamins can be up to 8 pills, which is a lot to swallow in pregnancy or in general, especially if we're not feeling well. You can crush your vitamins. You can crush your prenatal vitamins because of the fact that they're vitamins. You can crush them, or you have to get a powdered prenatal. So make sure you're getting a very pure powdered prenatal, and I would do a powder over a gummy. Of course, a prenatal is never going to substitute our actual nutrition, right? So the first step and the most important thing is that we're getting foods that are high in all of these things. Like, we're getting enough foods with folate and B12 and zinc and iron. So the most important thing is to make sure that we're having a big food diversity so that we're able to get all of these things naturally. And the most important thing is to keep our guts healthy so that the food is actually getting metabolized by the gut and the nutrients are getting absorbed into the body, so they can make our cells as healthy as possible so we can make hormones and support early embryonic development. And then we use a prenatal to fill in anything that we're not able to get. in our diet. So just remember, all prenatals are created equal. Your homework for this week is to, number one, be taking a prenatal if you're not taking one already. And then number two, just look at the back, audit your prenatal, make sure it has the number, type of ingredients that we talked about. And then if it doesn't have the ingredients that you need, or if it has a lot of additional fillers, throw it away, because you don't want to be putting that into your body every single day. A prenatal is literally something that you take every single day. You don't want to be doing dye, fillers, and sugars if it's something that you're putting into your body every single day. If you want your nutrients tested to make sure you are getting adequate nutrition, if you want us to take a look at your prenatal vitamin and see if it's a good one for you and your body and your specific situation, or if we need to add anything in addition, for example, extra iron, extra vitamin D, extra antioxidants, please do not hesitate to reach out. We want you to feel amazing every single day and be really confident in what you're putting in your body. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Hormone Café. Stay tuned for our next episode.